Okay, hi, good morning. This is Steve Sabludowsky, and today on the screen, the Google Hangout interview, we have Jim Brown. And good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Steve. Good to talk to you and all your viewers and listeners all over the world. I'm sure got a lot of people glued to what we're talking about. We've got some interesting things to talk about today.
Sure, absolutely, and thank you for appearing again today. Uh, the topic that we're going to talk about, quite frankly, is a new poll that about Louisiana politics, and it's a poll that was, I guess, funded by a gentleman up in Baton Rouge, a businessman, and with a firm called Magellan. Uh, they did something different this year. They used to, at least Bernie Pincinat was the pollster, and we'll hear later on, I think, in the next couple of days, as to why Bernie is not or was not the pollster for this particular poll. But
Well,
yeah, Jim, why don't you chime in at this time?
Well, I'd like to tell your listeners, Lane Grigsby has a large construction company in Baton Rouge, been highly successful, and has made it his mission to get involved in a number of political races. Very active in the mayor's races in Baton Rouge, a number of issues here, and he has decided to venture statewide, and does a poll fairly regular, funds it himself, and pretty decent guy, quite frankly, means well. And so he picked, I don't know why he picked this Magellan group. Normally he used a group called Southern Media. He referred to Bernie Pincinat, who is a active political operative in Baton Rouge and runs his polling firm. Southern Media is a good firm. I know that Magellan has a national reputation. They strike me as being a little on the conservative side as they put their numbers together. I don't think they slant the poll in favor of who they want, but some of the loaded questions we can talk about today. But the Magellan poll does give us a pretty good window snapshot of how this U.S. Senate race is shaping up here in Louisiana.
Yeah, I've done some research on this firm, and I think that the technology that they're using is quite impressive. I think they do a lot of polling around the nation, but everything I have seen, at least, has been pro-Republican. They had a slogan on their website that they took off. The slogan, I'm just paraphrasing, that their goal is to help Republicans win. So that they took that off, I think, about 2 years ago, perhaps, maybe three. They used to work for, and maybe still do, I don't know, or do work for the Republican National Committee. Also, quite frankly, for the same organization that the Koch brothers fund, Americans for Prosperity, I think it's called, and so I think you have to factor that in. To me, the way I look at it is that unless I hear something to the otherwise, I would consider this to be a very Republican and conservative poll. Now, that's not to say their numbers are wrong. I mean, some of these numbers I think are very consistent with what I have seen in other polls. But some of the questions I have seen, like you said, at least for me, I just have some real questions about it. One other thing is that they also worked for David Vitter, and in terms of his organization, that was which was to try to help to win the legislature in Louisiana. So, given all that, I just think you have to factor it in. That doesn't mean that it's not that these questions, in terms of the polls, that the races, doesn't mean that they're slanted. I'm not going to say that. I do have questions, however, about the questions that were asked. So that's just my own personal perspective. Go on.
Let's jump into the numbers, Steve, and I think it does. I think the interest obviously is the U.S. Senate race and Mary Landrieu and being the incumbent there for I think 3 terms. What I saw, the thing that came out from me in the poll is that her main opponent, Congressman Bill Cassidy, 6th District Congressman, where I live up in the Baton Rouge area, he announced maybe 14 months ago, and he's not made a lot of traction in terms of name recognition. He's not really been down throughout the state as much as I would have expected. I'm surprised by that. So he's got a ways to go, but the numbers, if these are correct, and tell me that this is a referendum on Mary Landrieu. You're either going to vote for her, or you're going to vote against her. Cassidy is kind of a nondescript fellow, low-key congressman, a doctor, very popular, liver, specializes in liver. His wife is a doctor, too. So they're good, decent folks, but there's nothing unique or dynamic. This is not a this is not a Rand Paul for the Republican Party, Ted Cruz, or a Hillary Clinton. He's not really defined himself. So the poll shows that if the numbers are bad for Landrieu or good, it's a referendum on Mary Landrieu. People are going to that poll by and large and vote against Landrieu or for Landrieu, and that's what the numbers showed to me.
Okay, so in terms of the numbers, I think that I think Mary Landrieu got 39%, and I think you have the numbers in front of you. But Mary Landrieu had 39%, and I think her favorables were 41%, since it's a referendum on Mary Landrieu, which I agree. And by the way, I believe that in terms of Cassidy, and I'm going to just say roughly, because I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm going by memory, I'm going to say roughly 38% of the of those people who were polled have never heard of Cassidy. Now, Cassidy's not the only candidate in this race. I mean, you also have a Tea Party favorite, Rob Menace, a very nice guy, and you also have Hollis. Hollis is actually leading Menace, and Hollis just jumped into the race. But
yeah, I think you're right. The numbers, to break them all down for your listeners, Senator Mary Landrieu at the election room today, Senator Mary Landrieu had 39.3%, Bill Cassidy, the Republican congressman, 26.3%, Rob Menace, the Tea Party candidate, I would say quite conservative, Colonel Rob Menace, Republican, 2.6%. Then, as you pointed out, Senator Paul Hollis is 3.4%, a little ahead of him. Undecided, 28.4%, almost 29% of the voters are undecided. So Landrieu is far from gaining any kind of a victory over just one major candidate. The other thing, as you pointed out, that her favorable is 41%. Her unfavorable right now is 52.2%. So Landrieu's got a real uphill fight, and it shows the referendum on her. And, of course, there's going to be a massive amount of money spent to show that she's okay. But you're going to see a lot more money from the Democrats spent on beating up and defining Cassidy. The good news for the Democrats is that Cassidy has not defined himself very well. So if you take $5, $6, $7 million, you can kind of define that for him. You can define him, if you will, in a very negative way. So Landrieu's numbers do not look good. But Cassidy's numbers look okay, but he's just really an unknown. What was interesting to me also in the poll, Steve, the poll didn't poll just Landrieu and Cassidy. I mean, it looks like they're going to both be in the runoff, unless a Bobby Jindal or a David, someone like that gets in the race that is completely out of line right now. Why didn't they poll Cassidy and Landrieu? And that was surprising to me, quite frankly.
Sure. You mean one-on-one?
One-on-one, right.
Sure.
They put them all together. So if you get rid of, I think if they did, my gut reaction would have been that Menace and Hollis's vote would have gone to Cassidy. It would have been a pretty even race with a huge undecided, is what I think what would have happened, quite frankly. So the story is Mary Landrieu. The other thing I mentioned that about Cassidy, I didn't mean it, when just picking on him. I've not seen Mary Landrieu much in the state. Now, she's speaking to the press club in Baton Rouge coming up here this Monday, so she'll be in the Baton Rouge area. But as far as retail politics, I came up, and some of the viewers don't know my background. I was in politics for 28 years as senator, secretary of state, insurance commissioner, and I grew up in our era of retail politics. And when you get down to a race like this, letting people know you if you're the incumbent is very important. I've not seen Mary Landrieu come to Alexandria, and particularly smaller areas. She might run into Baton Rouge or the press club, but has she gone to meet with the police jury in New Roads? Has she gone over to Plaquemine, Louisiana? I've just not seen that. She basically has stayed in Washington, comes in for a few high-profile events or money events, and I think that's a huge mistake for her because, you know, when you are the senator, you gather a large crowd. And if you've got a little political persuasion, the lady Mush, she's been in office on, you know, for many, many years, she can kind of win that crowd over and try to explain this vote on Obamacare, but she just has not done so. She's trying to do it all through media, and I think when all is said and done, that could be the deciding factor. She's just not hands-on enough. Cassidy isn't either, but he doesn't really have to be. He's the anti-Landrieu. I think his campaign is going to be just pounding Landrieu and letting all this out-of-state money come in and do the same thing.